striking woman leans against the cabin top of her sailing boat, smiling as you approach. Her green raincoat glistens with droplets. A silk scarf is tied around her throat.
Good evening, officers. I'm Joyce.
She extended her hand in greeting.
Joyce L. Messier. I represent the board of Wild Pines, the owners of the harbour. You gentlemen must be from the RCM.
She steps closer and holds out her hand over the railing. Joyce L., what does the L stand for? RCM, what is that? I'm a little foggy here. What gave us away?
Peyton, my maiden name.
A bony hand dangles from the sleeve of her oversized raincoat.
I'm glad to see you here.
The grip is tight and
Like
cold.
steel, there is strength there. If she wanted, she could sink her nails deep into your skin.
I was dispatched to handle a strike, not a lynching. Anything I can do to assist the RCM in this matter, I will, gladly.
That is good to hear, madame. My colleague will take the lead on this interview. I should let you know that he is recovering from an unusual medical episode. Very unusual. But I can assure you of his ultimate competency.
He's trying to signal something. He wants you to play up your condition. It happens quicker than a shooting star. But did the lieutenant just wink at you?
How interesting. I wish you a swift recovery. In the meanwhile, you have my full cooperation, and the full cooperation of the Wild Pines group. Why, yes I am.
Green and white sails flutter overhead. Not a lot of people on boats,
Of
are
course
there?
there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around?
Wait, we're on archipelago?
Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou.
Technically, the neighboring Ozone and Fas a la Mer island groups are archipelagos, while La Caillou, by contrast, is a single fertile landmass, the fourth largest island in the world. It is not an archipelago.
Wait, I thought the QA was one big island. Still, I haven't seen anyone else sail around here.
Okay, if you want to get technical, the point is we're all on islands here, and sail is still the most expedient way to get from one island to another, especially when you're in a hurry to resolve a strike.
Still, I haven't seen anyone else on boats around
I
here.
haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle. It's for crossing long distances in the greater Ravachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich.
Yes,
Before you do, it would be pertinent to ask other questions. Gather more info on this boat of hers.
Does she have a name? You have a list,
Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Her nonchalance might be related to something called the Wayfarer Act, a law that says she doesn't need a license. Sly Fox, you're not aggressive enough to harass her further on this.
The boat? No. It is called Cor de Lady 19 because that's the type of sloop it is.
Okay, but kind
It's
of.
a pleasure craft, a 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing. Though these days I mainly use it for business.
And you
My
like it?
sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
Oh my, the E word. You mean to say that it's a symbol of conspicuous consumption? That I'm a member of the ruling class?
No, it's a symbol of our subjugation to foreign capital, the bad kind of foreign capital. Forget about it. Sisamundo,
Detective,
close walk.
may I
Oh, there we
remind you that Mrs. Messier is a professional negotiator.
He doesn't look like he thinks you're best her in single
Then
combat.
what does that say?
Points to the
Does it
plaque on the
say
side of the page.
docking reserved for residents of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A? 33A? This old proletarian haunt here. As I...
He waves at the ruin looming overhead. As I said, plenty of people drive boats of all sorts.
She takes a sip.
Okay.
Something is about to happen in here.
Of course.
Nothing happens for quite a while.
Come from my head, the arguments.
It doesn't.
Nothing's going to
No
come.
worries. We can just go back to discussing my fast, large, interminably middle-class boat.
I think I'll have a handle on
Good.
the building. Tell me about Wild Pines. What do you do?
What we do. I'm afraid I don't speak for Wild Pines as a whole. It's a giant undertaking.
There was a touch of discomfort there. She wants to merely represent.
What do they do?
The Pines' core competency is logistics. Container shipping, freight, that sort of thing. See those airships there, blinking? Those are the shipping side of things.
She's pointed to small dots on the horizon.
And that is the terminal. Another subdivision deals with energy, oil and gas exploration, offshore platforms.
The Wild Pines Group is one of the original Revacholian Indo-tribes. Companies awarded royal monopolies by the king, the suzerain himself, centuries ago. The king is long gone, but several of the Indo-tribes remain.
How much money does Wild Pines have? Who are the other?
Son Baptiste, LUM, an unknown entity known as Brightest Star.
In good company.
Why, thank you.
It's not registered the real meaning of the remark. How much money does Wild
I'm
Pines
not at liberty to discuss the company balance sheet, but I can tell you that last year the company booked more than 20 billion real in revenue.
Numbers like that mean nothing to me.
Yes, past a certain point, numbers begin to seem imaginary, but they are quite real for the 72,000 employees who depend on Wild Pines for their paychecks. A conglomerate the size of Wild Pines is like a shark. If it stops moving and growing, it will die. Then what becomes of those 72,000 families? It is a tremendous responsibility.
Where does Wild Pines get
They
all this?
started as an exploration and cargo fleet conducting trade between the Samaran and Insulindian Isolas 250 years ago, when pine ships explored the South Seminese and charted Lomantang on behalf of the suzerain. Centuries of care, deliberation, and madness have gone into this endeavour. Vessels pass through the great unrest to re-emerge with apricots in tow. The logic of the system is totalizing. It's taken everything from its employees to build it.
Really helps to start out with a royal monopoly. Does such a huge system want to a place like this?
You mean aside from being the terminal's legal owners, who are responsible for moving 8% of the world's cargo?
Gives you a little smile. In the world, that's quite the endeavour indeed. Don't keep it moving, the workers do. The company is nothing without them. It's quite the endeavour
There are
indeed.
no minor cogs in the system. Each terminal must be accounted for, lest the entire system break. Every hiccup in such a system means thousands.
I've been trying to
lose
get
their
her to admit
jobs
she's
the world
rich, so I don't
over.
think flirting's on the card.
I'm here to assure that doesn't happen.
What can you tell me about the strike? What can you tell me about the lynching? Do you know something about these tattoos? I guess?
That's the man who was killed. I'm afraid this is a discussion for once we've cleared the lynching question.
You know something about the tattoos?
Better not tie the fourth day to the Bat's day on this. I hope there is something else I can help you with.
What can you tell me about the strike?
Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets.
Wait, what if I want to hear about trade secrets? What's your role in this
I
precisely?
believe the official title is Senior Labour Negotiator. In practice, I'm a
Negotiate.
grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
How are the
They're
talks
not.
going?
That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place.
Wait, she just admitted that the lynching and the strike are connected.
Ooh,
Now
she
they
did.
won't even let me into the harbour. There's a 2-metre-20 racist behemoth blocking the gates.
You mean John Luke, my race mentor? He's a teacher, a man of virtue. The strike is connected to the lynching. Yeah, let's go for that one.
Yes, I believe there is a connection, but that's a subject for later.
You mean Jean Luc?
So you've met him.
He's
Has
a
he
separate thing.
beguiled you with his inane theories?
My colleague has his peculiarities. Let's not go into this particular one just yet.
Of course. To each their own.
How are the talks going before the lynching?
Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
He looks at his notes.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike.
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive.
Ludicrous, even. It's meant.
What happened to this Gourmand?
Mr. Clare told him to, how did he put it?
She pauses to compose herself.
Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see.
Okay. Not cool.
Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union.
What are their demands?
There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes, every worker, a member of the board.
Oh,
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
I don't know what to think about that. Over-aggressive commie posturing. Seems like they have no idea about business.
In its defense, another said, demand democracy. Pretty tame stuff compared to every worker, a member of the board.
What does that even mean?
It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group.
Workers can be kings. The king is king. The king is dead. Long live the workers. That's pretty funny, I have to admit.
They're having a blast. But how can they afford it? After 4 months, my assumption was they would prefer a more practical solution.
What are you going to
I'm
do?
not sure. Naturally, I assumed that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the bowyer at the gates, the one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, call me mañana.
This checks out.
What are their demands? Scabs at the gate. Did you put them there? What do you think of Everard? That's all I need here. Let's change the topic.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, It's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of
Really?
course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood.
If you were to prick it with something sharp, you could see it oozing out. A knife, maybe? No, a rapier.
You sound like you're about to take a rapier to him. That's Everett, all right.
He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar.
We're hearing something about Edgar.
Have you seen him?
No.
Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over.
Oh,
It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues.
What about the union itself outside the Brothers Clare?
The D.B.S.B.F union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organised labour at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The Brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
He hesitates, looking for the right
Come on.
expression.
The debarders are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, we are forced to cooperate with them.
He says succinctly.
Refreshingly honest, officer.
She nods.
The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother.
He turns
And
to
your opinion, detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you
Explain.
say the D.B.S.B.F union is...
an effective advocate for the rights of local work, a giant leech sucking the life out of Rochelle, basically a socialist mob.
Thank you for being candid. Sadly, Wild Pines have cooperated with what amounts to a crime syndicate for 2 decades. However much you feed the wolf always hungers.
Scabs at the gate. Did you put them there? One more thing. You said something happened in the
I'm
election.
glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the union. She disappeared.
She's gone.
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore, or coming to work. Ever. End of story.
This forewoman, her name?
This poor woman, her name?
Sadly, the company records do not even give a name. She's just forewoman in private correspondence, Holly. I don't even know if it's a sir or given name, and I don't have access to the union's files.
Some kind of extortion, probably.
Indeed. The company suspects foul play, but there's nothing they could do. It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Scabs at the gate. Did you put them there?
The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock, come to plead for work where the union refuses to?
Don't let her answer it herself.
No, I mean scabs.
If these strikebreakers were organized by Wild Pines or its affiliates, then it would be a company secret. I could not share it with you. Not yet, at least.
It's implied. She's open to discussing this matter with you at a later occasion.
Of course. How else can I help?
Okay, so what can you
Quite
tell
a
me
few
about the
things,
lynching?
I'm afraid.
She falls silent for a moment, contemplating something.
The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi from Precinct 57. And this is my colleague from Precinct 41, Detective Dubois. I'm afraid Harry doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
Oh, and what happened to yours, Detective?
Returns the lieutenant's badge and turns to you. Remember when my partner told you I'd recently suffered from an unusual medical episode? My lost badge is related to it.
See. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode?
I could have eaten it for all I know. I don't remember anything. This world, the city, nothing.
Oh dear.
She sighs
I
with
suppose
compassion.
this does explain some of the more curious turns in our conversation.
She must have been suspecting something for a while now.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize, but I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement.
This is my boat failure. Fine, then I'll find it somehow. Let's try.
Feelings will guide you.
Snake eyes! But ma'am, I need to know about this lynching. It's very important to me. It's the case
I
I'm
assure
solving.
you, it is no small matter for me either. We all share the responsibility for disarming this situation. I hope you have a badge for me as soon as possible.
Not like a side case for me. This is my main thing. You have so much else. I have only this. Spread your hands. This is the entirety of my existence.
She's silent. The wind flaps the sail.
This
above
boat, for
her.
example, on her home somewhere. I only have this case.
Officer,
The carbon fiber whole crates. I don't remember anything except this lynching. There is only this case and this lynching.
you know, I don't mean to sound cold, but if you want something, you have to give something back. More than just guilt.
You're doing it. Despite your own best efforts, you're still getting in. Somehow.
I'll be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something tangible.
Like what?
The Union is conducting drug trade out of the harbour. It's an open secret in Martinez. Surely it must not come as a complete surprise to the RCM either. Perhaps it's time to look into it. Or you can find your badge, which honestly seems like a lost cause.
Detective, a word in private before we continue.